clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Auchincloss.
This committee is about competition, and the competition is about values. As the testimony of Ms. Tong Yi exemplifies, the Chinese Communist Party rejects the inherent value of the individual. It believes people are pawns of the state. The United States, by contrast, was founded upon universal and self-evident truths centered on the dignity and freedom of the individual. Mr. Pottinger, in your written testimony, you assert that free societies like ours need not employ disinformation. And I agree that truth is on the side of freedom and democracy, but I'm concerned that lies spread faster and deeper. How can the United States engage other nations, particularly in the global south, in diffusing propaganda and building civic support for the rules-based international order?
Congressman, thanks for your question. I think that helping fund independent journalism in countries in the global south is critical right now. That includes small Pacific Island nations, it includes large African countries, certainly includes countries in our own hemisphere south of our border. The work that is being done to identify government proxies and their bots and others who are really representing, but not always transparently, autocratic governments need to be called out. I think it doesn't mean that you have to silence autocrats, but it means making sure that there's truth in advertising, that people know about them.
General McMaster, another element of binding allied and non-aligned nations to the rules-based international order, particularly in Southeast Asia, is through ties of trade and investment. As the U.S. selectively decouples from China in order to prevent choke points, how might Congress structure a trade promotion authority for a revised Trans-Pacific Partnership to deepen and widen the bonds of trade with the rest of the Indo-Pacific?
Congressman, I think we have to do everything we can to foster an incentive for countries to do business with us, for companies to do business in the United States rather than with China, or to accept the bad deals that they get from China. I think the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework is a good start, but there are portions of TTP, that, especially like data standards, for example, that could be maybe adopted more broadly across the region. But then, I don't think there's much appetite, at least my assessment, you would know better than I would, for multilateral trade agreements. So we need more capacity for really high-quality bilateral trade agreements. We haven't had a new one of those. We've had revised ones. We haven't had a new one of those for 10 years.
Well, we could start with a TPA for Taiwan.
Absolutely.
How
about one with Great Britain, too? I mean, we could do that. I mean, Taiwan also, I think that should certainly be a priority.
We should build the will for multilateral trade agreements in Southeast Asia, and we have received solicitations from our allies, Australia, New Zealand, and others in that region, that they are willing to revise the TPP, and I think an updated TPA from Congress would send a very strong signal about our constrainment, I think, as Mr. Pottinger would put it in his written testimony, of Chinese aggression. I want to note, finally, in closing, General, your concluding paragraph in your written testimony, which I'll read in here. You write, "We should be confident. We might remember how in May of last year, the Kremlin leadership watched a well-choreographed military parade, even as its poorly led, ill-trained, and undisciplined military was failing in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the CCP was doubling down on its self-destructive zero-COVID policy and continuing its crackdown on the tech sector as it scrambled to contain a real estate crisis. Authoritarian regimes are brittle. Democracies are resilient." Well, the resilience of our democracy is up to us. Yes, the Kremlin and the CCP have committed public self-defeating errors in the past 2 years. But also in the past 2 years, the world watched as an American president summoned a mob to overturn a free and fair election and kill officers of the law. January 6, 2021 was Xi Jinping's best day in office. I hope the bipartisan spirit of competing with the Chinese Communist Party overseas extends to defending democracy here at home. I yield back, Chairman.
Ms. Hinson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, it's very clear we have quite the challenging task ahead of us, not just tonight, but for